Questions, and you're invited to reach out to our support desk at hello@embodiedphilosophy.com. And if you're wanting to connect with fellow students, we invite you to join the discussion in our private Facebook group. Kim and Ro, without further ado, I just want to pass it over to y'all to rock this space.
Thank you, Khalid. That was really sweet. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. It's really, really great to see your faces, to see people show up for this. Thank you so much, Khalid, Casey, and Latanya. I see you here too. To everyone in the team and to Dr. Chris, who initiated this whole shebang. So before I get in any further, I just really would love to ground together and just maybe offer a prayer into the space as we kind of engage this work in our lives. So feel free to join and just sort of listen along. Take some breaths in and maybe just make any adjustments to your seat so that you can feel a rootedness and let your body really arrive into this moment. For me, it's morning, but I know that for all of you folks, we're all quite spread out. And oh my goodness, thank you for the person who's coming in from Ubud. That's like, you're on the other side. That's amazing. So wherever you are in your day now is just a moment to arrive fully, and can just anything that you've been coming with, experiencing, or know that you're going to come to later, you can just pop that on the shelf and just allow yourself to be really present and available. And maybe as you bring your awareness inward, you can tune into any questions or any intentions that you personally are arriving into the space with. Maybe an offering of gratitude for yourself for challenges that might actually be bringing you here. For many of us, conflict is such an intimate form of challenge. And so as we ease into this container, this opportunity to learn together, I want to offer the prayer, the blessing, the hope, the invocation to divine consciousness, benevolent source, God, Allah, Buddha mind, Yahweh, as you like to call it, and also acknowledging spirits of the land, this sacred island that I am on, and all the homelands of those present. Please be with us and bless the space. This container is for our learning, for our growth, our development, our transformation, as we delve into sometimes some of the tougher content of our lives. May our exchanges, may our sharing, may our challenges be helpful. May this course be worthwhile to everyone present and into their lives, the spheres that they touch, all those lives that we extend into as part of their networks. Thank you for this opportunity for me and for Ro to share what has been of value for us as we traverse this territory. And also thank you to our ancestors who've brought us here, who've brought us this far in evolving our relationships and ourselves and helping us find unity among our differences, letting that all be part of our whole. Blessings, praise, amen, aloha.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Okay, so, hi everyone. Just gonna take a moment. Hi, Kayla, Jesse, see you here. You got a cool haircut, Jesse. I like it. There's Chelsea. So, hi, Andrea. So for those of us that are here, as much as you feel comfortable to, I would really love to see you and just feel you. So if you're comfortable to have your camera on and share your reactions and share your energy with us, that's wonderful. And I totally respect if that's not the case. If you've got a busy background, if you've got a kid next to you, like, you know, do your thing. Hey, Sarah. So yeah, I think I'm going to pass it. I've got more, as you can imagine. I've got more, plenty to come in these 2 Saturdays. But firstly, just great thank you for you all being here. And maybe before I introduce myself and the book, I'm going to pass to Ro so he can bring his voice in and tell us a little bit like where he's coming from. And Tanya. All
Thank you,
right, Ro, over
dear.
to you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. This is amazing, right? It's like little, ¿cómo se dicen? Like rectangles. Yeah, here we are, each of us, we're here connected. This is amazing. I'm so excited to be here. I feel so privileged. Thank you, Kim, for inviting me. I told Kim that like she invited me to work together, and it was just so like I felt like, oh my God, this is gonna be amazing. You know, I love Kim. I love what she does. I love how she is. I love how we've grown together, seeing each other grow and support each other, have disagreements. So I feel very privileged. And Khalid, working with Khalid too, it's been just such a nice experience. And so I just want to say that I feel super excited. I don't know exactly how to present myself. That's always kind of weird. Like, what do I say about myself? I guess I'll just try to do it like the typical and say some personal things too, you know. So I am a coach right now, a facilitator. I also study psychotherapy. I do plant medicine practice. Um, and I'm a Zen practitioner, and I'm actually a Zen monk in the Soto tradition through Maizumi Roshi, which is an LA teacher, and our teacher is Diane Musho Hamilton, which she invited Kim to write this book, and it was a very good idea of her to inviting Kim. So, so I just really excited that like I have an eclectic background. I also do I have like certain psychic practice too. So like it's kind of like it's a mix of everything. But I would say that the main thing I do is Zen. I help the Zen center that we practice, Kim and I practice together. I support to direct it and operate it basically. And I just want to say that I'm so privileged to be here and so privileged that we're able to share this. And yeah, I just feel so grateful and I feel my heart very open. So, and also we're gonna try to get into certain, well, not try, but we are gonna talk about conflict, which
Do
is
it,
why
Ro. Really talk about it.
we are gonna have to talk about it because it's it's kind of like it takes a lot of our time in our lives, you know. And I guess I'll just share my intention. My intention is to find my way through conflict, as conflict, with conflict, not as in a fight with it, you know, being one with it, as they say in Zen. So back to you, dear Kim.
Thank you. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I'll just be brief because I really want to, I'm excited to just get fully into it. And I think if you got here, if you came this far, you probably saw my bio on the site. So you got enough of the details at least to like know kind of where I'm coming from. I'll also share that I'm in the same tradition as Rose, so practicing Zen, and our teacher, Diane Musho Hamilton, a lot of her distilled teachings are actually, you know, kind of really feeding into the framework of this book fundamentally. So bows to her and bows to the lineage. And maybe I could just share a little something like on a more personal note is I've always really wondered about this thing, like what is coexistence in practice? Like really, how do we do that? It's so like lofty and esoteric sometimes when I see it in the sutras or I see it in, you know, just like the sacred texts from wisdom traditions of beyond or in the poetry of Rumi. And I want to find out, like I want to know how to live that. I want to know how I can manifest some of those really deep lessons and inspiration that's been kind of pulling me forward or coaxing me or reminding me in hard moments there's something more. There's actually something more here. There's something like this suffering or this division or this confusion that I'm in, that it has a place. Like I've always wanted to be held in the trust that there's something greater happening here. So I'll just share that. I mean, it feels kind of vulnerable. It feels like this is in my heart. Like I had a few conflicts this week actually, and Khalid and I it was kind of fun to connect on that before we started today. We were just like, sometimes when you're teaching something, you got to learn it yourself, right? Like if you're the one who's actually putting it out there, maybe it's because like, I'm really trying to, like, this matters to me. I'm trying to grok it. And so I feel a little vulnerable, a little humble as I show up today, because some of the conflicts that have cropped up in like this week, it feels like, oh, right. that's not a mistake. That's bringing the material live for me. And maybe I can, be transparent about the learning journey that I'm on with you, and share some of the things that I really trust in that are my guiding stars. So yeah, I think that's enough of that for now. So I think let's start by just shaping up the container that we're in a little bit as we kind of bring ourselves together today. And I can't help but notice that Chloe, it seems like something pretty serious is happening. So I just want to, okay, you take your space, but just acknowledge that we care and we're here for you whenever you want to return. Okay, so yeah, let's shape up our container so that you all know what you're in for and what are the ground rules that we have for how we exchange with one another and what do we hope would come for that. So Ro, I'm going to ask you to put up the ground rules slide. Thank you. Cool. So I hope you all you've been able to access the learning dashboard that Casey's really lovingly prepared and helped get that syllabus and all the readings ready. So I hope you all have access to that, and to the extent that you're able to read and prepare for this a little bit, awesome. If not, no worries, just like ride along with us, and then maybe there'll be time to go deeper if you want to read up and like, yeah, into anything that's really coming from this moment, I guess. So for these ground rules, I just want to firstly acknowledge Lloyd Fickett, whose work on the collaborative way, I mentioned him in the seminar. He was quite like, some of the guidelines that he has was really like influential for how we came up with some of these. And I'll just go through them. I'm going to just spend ideally no more than 20 minutes on this ground rules and intention setting part. So I'll run through them all kind of in one big breath, and then ask for like hand consent or any pressing questions, so that we can enter into this space on the same page. And then we'll move into intentions, and then y'all can have a chance to say hi to each other and share your intentions when we get there. So firstly, the ground rule be for each other. For me, this is like my Dalai Lama ground rule, kind of, if you just want to get inspirational, like off the bat, that sense of like, I am for your humanity. I am for your fulfillment. I am for you receiving what you need, finding your truth, expressing yourself, being heard, fundamentally having that sense of goodwill for everyone, and for especially including the people that I'm in conflict with. So that's the first ground rule, is like, we are all for each other. There might be moments where Ro and I are like, what? Like, I can't believe you just said that, or I can't believe you just said that, or whatever. But like, as those tensions come up, and because our brains, Rick Hansen does some really good work into this about like the negativity bias that we have, is that sometimes, especially in conflict, as our aperture contracts, we might be more inclined to focus on the negative, or why someone is being, seemingly dysfunctional. And this ground rule of being for one another is reminding ourselves that we are all human beings. Suffering and confusion is a part of all of our experience in different ways, and we want to help alleviate that for each other and for ourselves. So that's number one. The second ground rule and the third one, I feel like these come in a really sweet pair. And as we touch into sameness and difference, these two are going to be like our training skills today. So listening well is actively and reflectively listening. So that means I'm going to drop while I'm listening, I'm going to completely drop my sense of like, whether I disagree or don't, whether I disagree or I agree, or whether I'm analyzing what they're saying so that I can come up with some response or my own shopping list because it's boring, whatever I'm listening to. It's like listening well. It's like, okay, I empty out of all of that stuff and I'm going to join with and be really present and listen with my whole body. It's like not just with the mind, not just so that I can like get it right if you ask me what I heard, but instead to like let your experience come into me so I can foster this true empathy and this true understanding of what it might be like to be the other person. So that's listening well. We always want an abundance of that. Talking straight, on the other hand, of the abundance of listening well, talking straight is like, at times when it's in a disagreement, it's that homeopathic dose where when expressed really clearly, without blame and judgment, but just bringing forward someone's truth can actually be very catalytic to what might happen next. So we want to work with that really skillfully. And I put in brackets, be congruent, because straight as a word, you know, it's like, okay, that culturally makes sense in some ways. We're not saying taught direct necessarily, because so I come from, you know, mixed cultural background, and in the Far East, for example, it might not really be appropriate to just be super blunt. And like compared to what I notice happens in US culture, like there might be some places where I could switch into where actually I'm just being really sensitive to what's beneath the surface. However, in either context, I really wouldn't want to be congruent with my speech, my energy, my actions, the mindset, because we're incredibly perceptive. So if someone's talking to me and they're saying, yeah, that's fine, but everything in their body language is like, that is clearly not fine, it's going to be really hard for me to trust that they're giving me a fair report of what's happening for them. And it makes it a little bit harder to go deeper, especially when you get into topics that are, you know, more challenging. It's like we want to be able to be congruent in what we're bringing forward. So that's talk straight. Give support and challenge is acknowledging that sameness, belonging, safety, support, all of that's really valuable to who we are as mammals. Just like straight up, we desire attachment, we desire to be approved of, accepted, and at one point, you know, in our history way back when, to be ostracized from a group could have meant that's a challenge to your life. You know, so there's something just very innate about our animal body of like what it is to belong and be okay. However, without challenge, we don't really grow. And when there's too much support, it almost gets like, is someone going to just like say something real? You know, so like there's that support and challenge. And if we can feel that there's a challenge that wants to be made for the sake of growth, then there might be moments where Ro and I actually really bring that forward. And I also want to give this caveat, if you don't feel like being challenged at any one moment because you're aware that your nervous system is just a little bit too heightened that you can really receive, you can just say, no, thank you. Not right now, not willing to be challenged right now, just on this point. That's totally within your, I think remit is the right word. So the next one is use praise. And that's again, like acknowledging that we have that negativity bias, that sometimes we can contract around what's not going right. Praising what is going right in each other, in ourselves, in the process can be a really valuable tool. And I like to tell people, be specific. Don't just say like, great job, or like, I like the way you did that. Like, did what? Was it the way that they listened? Was it the way that they made space kind of in how they felt when you were in their presence? Like, what is it? Just being specific helps people identify what they are doing right and what we can continue just to encourage in each other, what's helping. Confidentiality. I like the little saying like stories. No, what is it like? I like stories can, I don't remember the saying. So you can share stories, but don't share identities and don't share specificities. Like you can share what you learned, or you can say, oh, someone in the group told this story, and from that, I really reflected on XYZ, but don't go out there and like name each other, and, you know, just respect that we'll go further in our trust together if we know that we have that confidentiality here. And then the seventh one is to just keep our agreements, because that's the foundation of how we build trust, and little agreements maintained over time allows bigger risks to be taken together, which is sometimes I think what we need as a whole society, is to take risks together with that trust. So Ro, you can take down the slide now so you can see a little more faces, and I'd love to see just a show of hands, like, are you in? Are these acceptable to you? Can you work with these ground rules? Nice, thank you. Great, appreciate that. That's a full yes from everyone that's I can see, and thanks, Marcia. Does anyone have any questions that you feel like need to be addressed at this point before we can move forward? Or are there any additions you can suggest? Like, I think we should also. Okay. These are ground rules you are welcome to try in your own conversations, by the way. If you find that they're working for you and you like what they cultivate, thanks, Shelly. If you like what they're cultivating, feel free to take that into your own life. If you've got something, assume good intentions, that's a good one for sure. Yeah. You can say to someone in your life, like, I really want to have a specific conversation with you, but I'm worried. Would putting a few, like when you go bowling and you stop the ball from going in the gutter and you put up that thingy, it's like doing that, like saying, okay, we really want to protect and keep us in a good channel. Would you be willing to take these on with me just for the sake of our practice? And, that can be a nice guardrails. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, cool. Thank you. That's ground rules. Now let's move to intention. Oh, wait, before I go on, I just want to say on ground rules. For myself, and so therefore I assume for some or many of you, there's certain conversations that you'd like to have, but for whatever reason, they might not be happening in your life. It might be a really important conversation around social justice, around something to do with identity, that you feel like a relationship or a group of people or even an institution isn't quite mirroring your sense of values on it. That might be the case for many of us. It might be that in your home relationship, partnership, that there's something that wants to be talked about, but maybe for fear of making things worse or for not knowing quite what to say next, we might be shying away from it. So that's kind of just like my presumption, is that there might be conversations that we want to have that are not quite happening. And some people are like, well, why do you need ground rules? Why can't you just let people be themselves, like on their own terms? And like, yeah, fair enough. And if there are conversations that aren't happening because of that openness of like, well, I just don't know what's going to happen, then this kind of construction of a little container can be really supportive in holding us as we take that risk and to open up into something unknown. So I'll just take a breath and say that's the reason why we're doing this, why we're trying this out. And that's in chapter 7 of the book, I think, if you want to dig more into that. Yeah, chapter 7. Okay, so let's move into intention now, because that's also something that I really love to bring in quite clearly at the opening of anything that I'm doing, especially for learning courses like this. But it also totally applies for the conflicts in our life before we enter into something. Setting, Ashima, let's do that slide. I think I gave you the intention. Thanks, Sam. So with the intention piece, and this has its own chapter in the book somewhere too. Diane, who she wrote a book called Everything is Workable that I read when I was 27, and it had like 18 chapters in it or something. But the one that stayed with me over the years and I continued to refine as a lesson was intention. And what she says in that, and what we are now saying like together and continuing to uphold it, is really important, is that intention that guides our attention. What we attend to of the myriad things that we could be checking out in anyone's moment, our intention will really hone our attention on that thing that is intentionally chosen. And then by giving that in our attention, we're giving it our energy, we're giving it our care, we're giving it, importance. And when we get into conflicts, where our hopes, our emotions, our strategies, our interests are all on the line as much as it is for anyone else, like the intention functions as a North Star. It's our compass, so that we know ultimately what is most important, even as other things might be triggering us or pulling us seemingly off our course. Having that intention gives us that chosen direction that we can return to when things start to go awry. It's a way of facilitating us back to whatever we choose to be of the highest good hopefully for everyone, but especially for ourselves. This has to be for the highest good of what you want. Very important also in negotiation techniques, that you go in there with intention, you've prepared, you understand what's of the highest value. You're willing to make concessions on the things that don't matter as much because you're in alignment with your intention. And something that can happen, which is always awkward and a little like humbling, is that when you set an intention, those other things that are misaligned show up. So if you've ever set an intention where you're like, okay, I'm gonna, I'm gonna listen really well. Like, just simply, my intention is to listen really well. And if I get into that space and I'm like, no, but, and I'm interrupting, I'm like, oh, you said that before, or I know what you're gonna say. That's not listening well, Kim. Like, it's just not. So that's normal. That's normal that once we set our intention, the opposite starts to come more clear. And then that's just information. It's just information to reroute and just be, okay, hey, I'm sorry about that. I slipped into an old pattern. Let me come back into a sense of what I really want to practice, which is hearing you out. So I'm sorry, let's start over. Please try again. Yeah, I'll just take a pause. Ro, anything else on intention you think that we should let folks know at this time?
No, nothing is coming up, I'm just thinking about my intention, basically.
Nice, great. Okay, cool.
I'm kind of thinking about it and clarifying it. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Okay. Well, maybe I'm just going to give a few examples of intentions that anyone could have, just to broaden out like the imagination. And then we're going to pop us into breakout groups of 3, so that you have a chance to say hi to each other. So you can, just say hi and then share your intention about why you're here for the course, which I assume is pretty similar to what you want to learn when it comes to conflict or relationships. That's my assumption. So, Ro earlier shared the intention that he wants to be one with the conflict. I think like move with it. What were the words you said exactly?
I said to find my way through conflict.
Find your way.
That would be like just the line. And then I kind of, when I was sharing it, I riffed a little bit in the sense of like finding my way through conflict means being one with it, not resisting it, which I tend to do and start interpreting it as something wrong. So the phrase, I would say, the sentence is finding my way through conflict. Awesome. And it has that sense of, so I can also expand a little bit, but that kind of says the whole thing, because working, like finding my way through it, it's not backing away from it too, for example. Anyway, I'm kind of like riffing on that phrase.
Yeah, thank you. Cool. So yeah, that's an example of one. Just like the whole approach and maybe the energy of how we relate to it. Others could be more skill specific, like I gave the example of listening well. Another intention could be, I want to have the courage to say what I mean. I want to have the courage to bring forward my truth. Another one could be, I want to learn how to hold multiple perspectives. I want to learn how to not collapse into a binary when things get heated. I want to learn to stay open. Another one could be, I want to learn to work with my reactivity. And so substantiating that could be, I want to remember to take a breath. I want to remember to give myself like a physical cue when I'm getting heated. I want to, place my hand on my heart and just take a breath. They can be things like that. I think.
Yeah, Kim, it came up, sorry to interrupt, but like came up like another of my intention would be also like, we are training as facilitators together and, like noticing my facilitation practice in relationship with what we're doing here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that would be also like something very important for me.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just going to address Joanne's question real quick, and then Khalid, if you can please help us to queue up the breakouts, and then y'all will have 15 minutes to just chat, say hi, talk a bit about your intention. if you feel like it, you can share, you know, if you have time, you can share like a relationship or a conflict where you think you can practice this. So Joanne, do we define conflict? Great question. I think there's different definitions. I don't think honestly, I don't think I have one kind of standing definition, but some things that I would offer are whenever a part is not considering the whole, whenever a part is taking its one side to be the whole truth of the whole situation and maybe not expecting the other side to be also part of that truth. I think that could be defined as a conflict. I know it's certainly possible to be in conflict with myself. So if I imagine there's different like selves within me, that there's friction, there's incongruence, like they're fighting against each other or pulling apart from each other. So I'd say when the relationship between parts is characterized by attention or a pull or a chasing but a running away, or you know, something like that, where there's some disharmony, let's say, in relationship. Some conflicts can be really quiet and simmer quietly, and some conflicts can be more charged and be more potentially destructive. So I think that's a range which is just true on both sides. Yes to being emotionally charged, but you could also be emotionally numb. You could be emotionally numb to a conflict. And yeah, definitely disagreement comes in. So yeah.
Well, as people are writing the other intentions, Kim, I wonder if I could invite someone just to share.
Yeah, go
Is
for
that
it.
okay?
So, yeah. So if anyone didn't hear Rose say before, please pop your intention into the chat because we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, and I wonder, Michaela, would you be open to share? Thank you.
Absolutely. Hi there.
Hi.
Yeah, so my intention, there's two sides. I would say as an individual moving through the world, I'm very conflict avoidant. I'm a very conflict avoidant person. And so I want to learn and understand how to become close with conflict and communicate with conflict. Have like that shared language with this idea or feeling. And then also in relationship to my work, I do a lot of facilitation and training in the umbrella of diversity and inclusion. And so, you know, navigating conflict and difference in those contexts is especially important. So I'm looking forward to just how that could reshape my work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it. I'll just reflect back. I hear you identify the pattern of conflict avoidance. And then I heard you say that you're wanting to become close with conflict, which I love that. It kind of suggests like more intimacy, like leaning in a little maybe. And then I totally trust that this will support your facilitation work. You'll be able to be more effective in those conversations by, yeah, having more skills to move in as needed. Sometimes you might move away if that's needed, but you've got choice now. So, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ro, do you want to just read out some of the ones that you're seeing in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that. Let me see here, like Kimberly, better practices for embodying conflict, paying attention to how conflict shows up in my body. Helping others in my work would be able to address conflict. Let me read another one. This is amazing, everyone. If you want to go to the chat and read some of the team intentions, it's nice. There's maybe someone would like anybody that like to share, like maybe like that. Kimberly, do you want to share a little more about your intention?
Oh, sure. So I don't know that I'm conflict averse, but I do know that I'm not very connected to my body. Just lots of like drama. So I really appreciate this approach. That it's not just that it's more embodied practices. So I'm hoping that I'll just better connect to that aspect of conflict transformation.
Perfect. Great. Thank you for naming that piece, because like that's so important to how we like designed this, which is to let the body be really part of the landscape, like, and let it inform us, you know, so that all those sensations and things, that's information for us to help intuit what's right. So thank you for being that person and saying that today, because now from this here on out, I'm going to be just like holding you as someone that I'm really speaking to For sure, yeah, like, because we're in Zoom world, right? It can get kind of heady and abstract, but remaining rooted in our bodies is totally what I want to do. So yes, thank you. Also, that's how I spell my name too, so I just love to see it. I think I'm gonna move on now, because there's like a whole sameness and difference piece that I really want to land today. But thank you everyone else for sharing your intentions. I'm going to be downloading this chat and reading them all later. They look great. Okay. So, oh, hi, Khalid. Sameness and difference. Okay. So maybe can I just ask by show of hands, who saw that there are readings? Did you get a chance to check them out, skim them? Bava saw them. Great. Okay, presuming not so much foundation right now, and that's fine. So let me just take a moment, because this is a framework which underlies some stuff. So what I think I want to share is that this is a framework through which we can maybe map what's happening into this sort of, imagine like a yin yang circle of sameness and difference. Like everything in the universe is really this sameness and difference thing, and just different measure, different interplay in a sense. Like, and maybe even as I'm just saying it, you can feel how like this whole universe on some level, it's one thing, right? Like you can just, if you gotta get kind of expansive, and for me, obviously doing this with my hands must help, but like we are one thing on one level, but then at the same time, the differences between us are endless. Like there's no end to how different I am from this cup, or how different my backstory might be from Michaela's, or, even as we're both like human beings. My friend who I work with, she said something really hilarious to me the other day. We were just talking about science, and I admit I'm not like a big science head, but she's like, did you know we are 50% the same DNA as a banana? What? What? Are you kidding me? And then turns out we're like, I don't know, 95, 98% same as like chimpanzees. And then bonobos are another way in which our DNA has been like, it's been like, whoa. So just to say how it's all put together, like it is bananas. It totally freaking is. So sameness and difference is just like this lens, this yin yang-ish lens that we can look through and just examine what's going on. And Ro, do you mind popping up the slide? That was a good moment. I just want to share, like, what are the qualities? What are the properties? How do we know how much is present of one of the other? Imagine these to be kind of like these ratios. So I imagine that what happens sometimes in conversations, in conflicts, is that we really zoom in on our differences. Actually, wait, let me take a step back. Sameness, the property of itself, sameness is to do with belonging. It's to do with that mammal side of who we are. It's to do with like the bonding that happens between human beings. And to speak of the body, and Ro, I know I was going to ask you to chime in, but I'm just going to go with it right now because it's kind of just rolling in. In the body, it feels like safety. It feels like my heart can just soothe a little bit. It feels like I'm hugging my best friend. It feels like when I say something to someone and they really understand and I feel seen. There's a coherence, it's stabilizing. That's sameness. Difference, on the other hand, differences are exciting. They are a spark of catalyst. Like they are like a little drop of difference in the right moment. It's like, wow, like things can really emerge. They're energizing. They give us energy. They can be hilarious. They can be really challenging. And so when we have an overabundance of difference, they can become threatening. And this also goes to the animal side of who we are. So the body knows it, knows the excitement, knows the you know, the rising energy in the chest, or like little bubbles feeling around the outside of the belly, or hands getting hot, you know, or maybe mine, my head just starts leaning forward. Like these are all exciting cues, you know. However, when there's too much difference, it becomes threatening, and it's like, wait, you or me, fight or flight. The amygdala hijack, this is too much. That's when we start contracting around, well, what's the safest way here? What can I hang to? What do I know? What can I rely on? And that's when it's a terrible time for creativity. So in our conversations, we want to become really nuanced and skillful about how we are aware of that balance, and then how we are influencing or facilitating that balance, so that we can keep our conversations in states that stay within range, that we can still hear each other, but we are being real. But maybe if it's getting too real, maybe we need to like pace ourselves and actually slow down a little bit and reflect what we're hearing versus coming in with more difference. I'm going to unpack more of this, especially as we go into like the skills of what this is. But in the book, we say, like, we think that every conversation about difference needs to begin and end with acknowledgement of the ways in which we are the same, that helps us house the difference in a more helpful and constructive way. But just to play the other side for a second, I don't want to leave this out, that if we, and I think I gave a nod to this earlier, that if we have too much sameness, it actually becomes kind of repressive. It actually makes us feel like we can't be different and we can't be ourselves. If we're expected to be in this traditional model where everyone bows at the same time and we sing the same hymns and you don't stick your head up in the classroom because you don't want to get hit, like that's not really good for us either. There needs to be a way for us to be emergent and bring forward the actual uniqueness of who we are. So that's just the downside of too much sameness. And then I already gave you the downside of too much difference. And it's not a perfect metaphor because the yin yang has both sides, but you can imagine that one side, imagine that like one big swathe of that shape is sameness. And then you have that like that catalytic important blob of difference, that little circle that shows up right in the center of it. I think that's how we want to conceive of that ratio. It's like an abundance of sameness. I said an abundance of support earlier, but then just the right amount of challenge, just the right amount of difference, and the right difference. Maybe we have to choose which difference it is we want to put on the table right now for the sake of being able to house that in a more supportive process. So yeah, that's all a big mouthful. Let me just check my notes real quick and make sure there's nothing I want to. Okay, the final thing I'll say about this, and then I'd love for us to just chat about it for the next 10 minutes. You can bring forward questions, we can clarify. But I said that we want to be aware of and facilitate the levels of the sameness and difference in our conversation. Because generally speaking, conflict where we feel like, okay, this is getting bigger than us, maybe I want to de-escalate, that move I feel like is one of the more important ones for most of us, is to like, okay, I'll speak to the other side in a second, but if the differences are getting too high, the most fundamental skill that we can offer to bring ourselves back into sameness is actually to reflectively listen and maybe invite turn taking in that. That creates this opportunity for, say if it's me and Rose saying something and we're in some kind of disagreement, you know, I can say something like, okay, like Rose, let's just pause. For me, the difference, I'm just getting maybe a little overwhelmed in like some of the differences. I want to track carefully and make sure I understand. So I'm going to reflect. I'm just going to listen and reflect back. Is that okay? Hopefully I'd get his agreement. And then I would just reflect back to him. Okay, this is what I heard you say. Just want to make sure I understand. And you can let me know if this is not quite right. And slowing down and joining with him is immediately going to create more sameness. It's going to create more relaxation in the body. Ideally, I'd like to give him an experience that he has been heard and that he feels belonging, and that I'm helping to co-regulate both of us into like, okay, this truth is just allowed to land, and we're going to find some sameness on just like joining with that being the case for you. Bear in mind, and I'll say this for sure in like the second module, listening does not equate to agreement. I can listen and reflect back and let that be his truth without me saying like that's valid and overrides my own. And then from that place, I have a better chance of asking him, okay, will you do the same for me? I really want to make sure that my piece gets to lie on this table too. And that is a way of creating sameness, slowing things down, pacing the difference, instead of, can you imagine if I just ricocheted back with like, well, you don't ever do this, or like, I'm just maxed out, I've got to leave, So that's a way in which we can manage that difference back into a place where it's not so threatening. Sameness, on the other hand, where we have too much sameness present, and for those of us that are conflict avoidant or conflict accommodating, we might think of as a style as well. There's, by the way, this is a very crude distinction, but there's like the aggressor, the accommodator, and the avoider. These are kind of like very down and dirty defaults that we can fall into. So for those of us that are more avoidant or accommodating, and we don't actually feel like we have the trust that we can disturb the levels of sameness, something we can do is like, if it's like, okay, the other person is and I'm just joining with too much, we can say like, okay, so I think I've heard out your point of view. Would it be okay if I bring in a difference? Would it be okay if I shared with you one way in which I have a different perspective? And say if I'm talking to Ro and I get his agreement, yeah, like of course, because he's going to be a reasonable person. I don't think most of our friends out there are not actually dictators who are going to be like, no, you can't share your view. And if they say that, well, then you know what you're dealing with anyway. So for better or for worse. But if he's like, yeah, you can bring in a difference, of course, like then it's already like, okay, great, we're creating a culture where our conversation can hold more difference. And then I can say, okay, well, I heard what you said. For me, just given my life experiences, not necessarily so. So this is a way in which I differ. I see things from this way. And that can be a way of like you bringing in a difference. And then, from that, the other person can be like, oh, never thought of it that way. Like, that's interesting. And having their permission really helps for them to like be able to hear you. Another way to not ask permission and just be like, so if Rose said, this is what happened to me today. And I was like, that's just not right. Or I don't think that's what happened. That's like me bringing in a difference, but I didn't help to facilitate that transition well. So he's going to feel that more as an attack. And there might be some relationships where we do that, but it's about having the choice, about like how to manage and, as I say, facilitate the sameness and difference. We're going to get more into this. I know I'm saying quite a lot in quite a short period of time, but I just want to pause here and ask, is this making sense? Can you find this in your experience of like how it could be helpful to toggle? Cool. Thank you, Rachel. Does anyone have any questions? Is there anything you want to unpack more? Just at this moment.
I just want to say, I think I really appreciate that advice for speaking with someone who can be, or at times when we can be that ourselves, who's conflict avoidant, because it can be really, really hard to soften the edges of their barrier when they put something up where they're like, I don't want to hear any side. They feel so threatened that we feel like we can't even approach it with the love that we'd intended to, because they're so shut down. So how do we open up a space? It's like magic, like when we can just be present and open enough so that they feel safe enough, that the animal inside of them can say, oh, okay, it's safe to share this thing that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, I feel so much in what you're saying, and I feel your care for that person. And so what I would kind of maybe suggest is, if that's happening, because what you said is like the intention to bring them back into more of a safety where they could allow themselves to say more, or even to take a small risk. So if that was us and that was you, I would want to join with you. I would want to slow down and just not introduce any more difference, but instead, like, as much as I could, reflect back and just give your energy, your state of being, space to exist in a way that I'm sharing in it with you. I can say, depending on how well I know you, right? I don't want to be pushing into someone's vulnerability too much. I want to be careful of that. But I can say, if I was if I was you, I can see how I would feel overwhelmed. And so maybe just as I have empathy for that part of the experience, maybe we could just like sit in silence together for a minute, or just breathe together, or maybe like if I was you, you know, I know the content of this matters a lot to us, so just want to make sure I'm taking care of our emotional selves, and just, yeah, like pace. And if there's anything that they have shared, you can reflect back. I heard you say, so that they can feel heard and hopefully soothed, and you're being really present for them.
I love that. That sounds like a really beautiful way to approach like a de-escalation.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is another intention that I've had in taking this course too. I have like really dull de-escalation skills. So thank you for sharing. I'm writing all of that down.
Thanks. That's great, Chelsea. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything?
I have a question.
Yeah, hey.
Perhaps it's not relevant just at the moment, but in our agreements, there was lots of care and positivity, but often you're in conflict perhaps with somebody who doesn't care and who doesn't have the best interests of the relationship at heart, or is incapable or unable to have equal relationships, so they're very domineering. And I guess it's, how do you, because saying, you know, I hear you reflecting back, asking for permission or an invitation to speak more can sometimes be just cut down. And I guess that reflects something of the relationship, so that's giving you some information. But some of those relationships we have to stay in. That could be because we're a family member, or an ex-husband, or a parent sibling, or don't have the choice always to choose not to be in a toxic relationship, and there the conflict isn't as easy to be soothed or to have reasonable agreements. So how do you deal with those sorts of conflicts then?
Yeah, it's a great question. I hear you, and I imagine that applies to every one of us in this room, that there's some folks who we are dealing with who just aren't willing or interested in playing by the same rules, or maybe for whatever reason their own karmas don't lead them to have that interest of changing the ways that they engage. So that's real, and just like, thank you for naming that. I think from where I come from, and I'll just share, like in my background, and I did some litigation and arbitration, so I'm kind of used to like also putting on a certain head when it comes to conflict, where this is actually about interest in negotiation and about power at times. I will say, however, like, well, what is it I really want to say? I think that we also fundamentally have choice. I think when I hear you say that there are, you know, family members and people that we're dealing with, I'm not saying that like we should always cut people out. I think there are very worthy opponents that we have in life that are, those are the most fierce conflicts at times that can transform us the most profoundly. But I think that we have choice always about how we want to engage. So if someone is speaking to, so if it's like, okay, they don't have the ground rule before each other, so they're coming in with an aggressive energy, a dominating energy, and they actually don't want me to get my perspective out. Well, as you said, that's really good information, and that might change how I engage with them. It might change how much I let them into my life. It might change also how much of my well-being I put in their hands. I might need a very strong boundary about when I'm done, about when I'm just done, and I'm not going to stand for it. And the more I can communicate that from a kind of a clear place of when they're crossing a boundary and when I'm tapping out, at least they're going to get a consistent message about what for you is unacceptable. And I would say that the more that we can practice this work in our, let's say the more like the mid-range relationships, the more effective we can be in those more high stakes conversations. So there's a tendency to be like, okay, well, what do we do with like Kim Jong-il? What do we do with like, you know, like what do we do with Gaza? like, and when I'm saying, like, of course I want to always include like that there are really very, very serious conflicts in the world. I'm kind of looking at Jessie now because we both have international conflict resolution in our backgrounds, and just like the realities of the suffering that exists under such deep wars that are very inhumane and completely like, so just all of that is super real. And I think the place where we can really practice and hone our skills are in those mid-range relationships to become really well versed. And then when we're in those moments when we could have been the most triggered, as Kimberly was saying, like we can be aware of our bodies, and maybe when I'm still at a 4 versus a 9, state clearly where I want to be asked to be met. And if that's not being, if that's not agreeable to the other person and they really just want to tear me down, I have the choice to leave the room, versus like staying in it and until I'm in such a charged and triggered place that I'm completely shut down and I can't help myself or my people. It's like, so take a big breath, because I think it's that's not an easy one, but thank you, Andrea. I hope that gives you something at least to work with for now.
You have. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Hey, Jessie.
Hey, I was moved to say something before you kind of mentioned my name, but I think Andrea's asking like the most important question, and you can't talk about conflict without asking about those scenarios. And I don't want to contradict anything you're saying, Kim, around there are times when you make a boundary and you gather the information you can about where someone's at and what they're capable of and what their intentions are, and then you choose accordingly. But I would also say that when we're in conflict, we may experience people's intentions as really malign, and that's part of being in conflict. And sometimes it's true, but sometimes there can be shifts. So some of the tools, Kim, that you're talking about around listening can sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes can help someone else to shift to a place where, like, if we're really listening to understand them, they may also shift to a place where they're willing to give us something in exchange. Like, definitely not all the time, but I think I wouldn't want to say that we can't use these skills in contexts. I'm not going to say like Kim Jong-il, but but I don't know, right? Like, I'm going to stay agnostic on
that.
Yeah. Until I've tried,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to say that like you can't use this stuff in like the really bad situations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because sometimes you can't.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Someone said earlier, like assuming good intentions. Yeah, we might not have the whole story about why someone is being that way. Thanks,
Can I say
Jessie, and thanks,
something?
Andrea. Yeah, I just want to also be mindful that we're going to get into breakout groups in a second. So, Ro, yes, say something, but just
1 minute. Yeah, it's gonna take 1 minute so we can go to that. Yeah, yeah. Like I want to say, Kim and everybody here, it's like this is also a little bit like this thing we're training is like improv class. Like we're literally like saying like what works, what doesn't, and kind of like we all have a sense, and we're gonna keep clarifying. But like when you're in it, everybody, you kind of like you're in it, and it's like an experience, and life is mysterious, and it's so like the in this I'm kind of quoting Zen style. I'm saying Zen style things in the sense like it's like we're sharing, but we need you to take a grain of salt everything we're saying. You have to be like, we're not, oh, like Kim said this to me and I'm gonna go and do it. Oh, Rodrigo said this. No, you have to be in it, grab these tools, and feeling your heart and full on into it. I wanted to say something else, Kim, but that's kind of like like, yeah, because if not, it becomes too conceptual in life. It's so alive and so mysterious that we're giving tools, we're sharing them, and Kim is sharing them mainly, but we need to realize that we need to lively engage and not knowing exactly what's going on a lot of times, and trying to keep ourselves relaxed at the same time. So it's a big order, but I just felt the need to say that.
Thanks, Rob.
And that's why all different perspectives we're going to be sharing, and don't worry about the difference or the same of our perspectives. It just adds, like exactly what Andrea was saying right now, like Jesse said, like something like, it's opposite things. Oh, and one last thing I want to say, Kim, and that's I'm gonna, because we have to go to small groups, but the proximity, playing with proximity in relationship to like how close you get, how far away you get, and playing with that also. Just Andrea, I was thinking about what you were saying, how to play with proximity.
Yeah.
That's all, Kim.
Thanks, Rob. Cool. Cool. So just let's let that kind of just simmer, let the tea steep like in the background. We're gonna do a little breakout exercise that first we're gonna model for you and then put you in groups of 4 this time. And this exercise is really to notice what happens in your body with sameness and difference. And it's also a way for us to get to know each other a little bit better, because what's coming in this course will go deeper sort of by virtue of how we can actually enter into this space together. So feel free to have fun with it. And yeah, it's like improv. It's great. The sentence stems that we're going to give to you are one way we're the same is, and then we're going to switch at halftime, be like one way we're different is. And I want you to really pay attention to the sensations in your body. And I really hope that y'all caught the recording of the Working with Strong Emotions, where we went through the spectrum of feeling, but bodily sensations are what are happening like in that most unmediated direct level of like around the heart or around the stomach, or like sweatiness in the hands, or like sense of relaxation or spaciousness like in the mind, or anything like that. As you do these stems. And so with difference, especially, like notice like what comes up for you as you do these differences. Where is that excitement like telling you that it's present in your body mind? So Khalid and Ro, let's just go around sort of like twice and model this, and then we'll put everyone into the breakouts and you can all have a go. So, okay, cool. Maybe we'll go like Ro, Khalid, me, Ro, Khalid, me, same as twice and then difference twice.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
So I'll start. So we're the same. We're all
the same.
One way we're the same is that we are all in front of our computers right now.
Yeah, true.
True. One way we are all the same is that we, to varying levels of proficiency, can speak a language other than the language that we were born into, I guess, or from the country that we were born in.
One way that we're the same is we are all people of color.
One way we are the same is that we want to work with conflict. That's why we're here.
One way we are the same is, I think, similar to what Ro was just saying, I think we all enjoy facilitation to some degree or another.
One way that we're the same is we all have pretty short hair, and we have 2 eyes and a mouth. Yeah. Great. Okay, nice. Let's switch it up now. So that was the sameness one, and then let's do difference, and you'll have more time for this in your grades.
So difference, we are in different geographical places, like quite different. Like so.
One way we are different is we have a different choice as to what we wanted our rooms to look like for facilitation and presentation. So yeah.
One way that we're different is we were brought up in different homes with different cultural understandings, different messages.
Yeah. Well, difference, like we like our clothes are different, like face, hair also is different. Kim, you don't have face hair. You know, so what we're wearing, how we look, like our style and everything, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Jewelry or not jewelry, you know.
Yeah. I would say one way that we are different is the cadences of our voices also are different. So how we like inflect and choose where we emphasize certain words or different words is also very different.
Mhm. One way that we're different is we currently are working on different intentions in relationship to conflict. Yeah. Cool. Hi, welcome back, everyone. So I'm seeing some smiles. I'm going to take that as a good sign. And I would love to just hear briefly, maybe into the chat, just like what was your experience of the sameness? Was there anything you picked up on in your body that you want to just pop into the chat and let us know? We're just going to debrief this real quick and then we'll take a break, refresh a little bit.
I want to mention that, can I mention something? I loved, and what a good reminder that when I got stuck in thinking, oh my gosh, what are the ways that I'm similar to somebody I've never met before, and I don't know, just like, oh gosh, it's so simple. Okay, we're all sitting down, we're all wearing clothes. It's not just, we're all human beings in this room, but we all eat food. Someone had said that in our breakout group, you know, and it doesn't, I think simplifying it is a way to be less reactionary towards, from myself, leaning towards the differences, which I'd mentioned in the group was easier for me in general to think of why I'm so different from an other doing the othering thing than just feeling at peace and relaxed with the simplicity of how I'm just similar to somebody I've never met. Or that I've known forever.
Yeah, that's good. And yeah, we want to be able to locate all of that so we know how to refine that when it's going to serve us in our relationships and our conflicts. It's good. Yeah, we want to know that territory well.
I would
so
say,
I was just seeing there's like kind of a connected, sorry, did I just speak over someone? Oh, hey, Latanya. I'll move to difference in a second, guys. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. I was going to talk about difference.
Yeah, perfect. Segue us, please. Let's do difference for a second and then we'll take a break.
Yeah, what was interesting was that it was more difficult for us to name difference in that it was based in assumptions. Because we didn't know each other. So
you did? Well, you were in a group where people knew each other?
No, we did not. We did not.
Okay.
So our differences were difficult to, I mean, outside of what we could see, but, you know, we were in the rounds. So we ran out of things to talk about in the physical environment.
Interesting. Okay.
And then the other things we talked about were, we were assuming we were different. So I found that very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. With the assumptions, is there like a fear of making a mistake, fear of offending, fear of getting it wrong?
I could see that there was some apprehension, you know,
fair enough.
We could feel one another, like you could see question marks, you know, is this okay to say?
Yeah.
We did some of that in the same as well. Like I think we were very sensitive to, I mean, yeah, I think we were very sensitive to one another.
Yeah, I think that's totally legit. I think we are primed to like want to care for the collective experience, and we don't want to say things that are revealing bias or projecting bias or anything like that. With Khalid and Ro, like we got to hang out in preparation for this call, so I felt like it was really fine to say like we have different cultural backgrounds. To me, that's kind of like, isn't that just true? Like so anyway, so I can empathize that wasn't as easy if you were just like thrown into it and you're just having to. Sorry about the street noise. I will close this in the break. But I hope that as you did the difference, I'll just name them real quick. I hope that you felt like, I mean, Latanya, you speaking to it, like there's a bit of a nervousness and apprehension, a question mark, like, is this okay? And for me, I would locate in the body about like, I'd feel a little less grounded. My stomach, like the high stomach, might feel a little flutter. Might not be as aware of my limbs, might not have my feet planted, kind of a feeling. And for some of us, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is, you know, hilarious. Or like, yeah, I don't have curly hair. That's just so silly and small and true. And so yeah, anyway, I hope that you got to have a little bit of a taster. And when we return, we're going to convert some of this information maybe into more like skill sets that we can practice. Cool. Andrea says that she had some fun and lightness in the same. That's great. Well, thank you, everyone. All right, welcome back, folks.